Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us for our webinar. We're going to wait a few more minutes as we have close to over 50 individuals who have registered today. And we see you all coming in. We're so excited to have you. So we're just going to give it one more minute, and we do plan on starting right at 12. Today's webinar will also be recorded, so we'll be looking to, as we partner with Pivot, that'll be available on both Pivot's Facebook page as well as with Northern Credit Union at mynorthern.com. So in the event that you do need to step away or you're not able to join us for the full webinar, you'll be able to have access. We have a few more people attending already, so we have 14 already in attendance. We'll be starting shortly. So more people are attending, so we will get started shortly. So here we go, we're gonna start recording. So thank you again, everybody, for joining us today. Together, Northern Credit Union and Pivot are wanting to share more information on the unemployment scams that we're seeing that are happening within our community, as well as other related scams connected to identity theft and fraud. We have a group of employees here at Northern that are going to be sharing various different topics. Before introducing them, want to do a little housekeeping. You'll see within the webinar, you have an option to chat in questions as we go through, as we're going to be providing a lot of great information today, as well as links that are going to be referenced by our different presenters. So I asked that we did get a series of questions that came through the registration. We do plan on answering many of these questions throughout the presentation and within our QA session. But there may be a question that came up that you weren't originally thinking of, or that's prompting different questions. So we just ask that you chat that through. You can chat that through the entire audience or directly by choosing organizers and panelists only. We'll also have opportunities that if you have questions that are directly related to more personal information, you can ask to have a member from the Northern Credit Union team reach out to you to talk about your specific situation. So with that, I'd like to take some time and do some brief introduction to our presenters. So from Northern's Human Resource team, we have Kate Albrecht-Fiddler and Mary Grant. Together, combined, they have over 28 years of HR experience. So we're excited to have them here with us today to really take a deeper dive into what's happening for the unemployment claims. So they'll be walking through a lot of great information and available to answer some of those questions that are coming through from registration. We also have joining us today Ashley Backus and Jessica Ridsdale, who've had some direct experience with the unemployment scams that came through. And they're going to be able to share some personal testimonies that impacted them. And from our fraud prevention department, we have Katie Edmonds. Katie's been with Northern for 5 years and 2 years within our fraud team. So excited to have them here to be able to share more information. To give a high overview of what we're going to be discussing today, first we're going to take that deeper dive into the unemployment side. And then we're going to be diving more into, based upon your questions that came through, COVID-19 scams, unemployment, and impersonation scams, touching really on that Social Security, tech support, and customer service. So we're going to kick off with Kate from our Human Resource Department. Kate, how are you doing today?
I'm great. I'm so glad to welcome everyone today. It's great to have so many interested attendees. I just want to review specific to unemployment scams what we'll try to cover today as much as possible. What are unemployment scams and how are individuals impacted? We want to give you an idea of what to look for, how employers can help, how to protect yourself, and we'll definitely touch on some other types of fraud. Next slide, Jen. So what does an unemployment scam entail? What is happening and why? An unemployment scam entails an individual's information, their social security number, their address, and perhaps some other information being used to provide an opportunity for a fraudster to commit fraud by receiving unemployment under someone else's name. This is happening because the data that is used was accessed through breaches previously, and now we have a significant influx of unemployment claims and inquiries. Next slide, Jen. So how are people impacted? Well, this is definitely a broad topic. Identity theft is a big piece of this. Our personal credentials are used to gain access to our credit and/or unemployment files. And unemployment fraudulently claimed can be used and actually will be used by the IRS and New York State to track income. And so that would be reflected on your income tax filing. And due to the recent scams, additional steps have been added to the identity verification pieces of unemployment filing and claim verification. So for individuals who are filing a legitimate claim, that has reduced their access, or rather it has significantly increased the amount of time that it takes to receive their benefit and the much needed income. So what can we do to help? Mary, would you like to kick that off?
It seems like we might be disconnected. 1 second. Oh, Mary, can you hear us now?
Oh, I'm sorry. Can everybody hear me?
We can. Thanks,
Okay,
Mary.
sorry about that. Thanks, Kate, for your pieces, and I'm glad to see everybody here today. I'm definitely going to dive in a little bit deeper on a question that was raised on what employers can do to help. When employers receive information from the Department of Labor, we would receive a couple different notices. One is a unemployment notice of potential charges and also a notice of protest. These pieces are something that we're going to want to look for closely. We want to look at the unemployment claim, checking the information, whether it be their name, their address, and their social security numbers. We want to reach out to the Department of Labor if we notice that it's someone that is currently employed, obviously, but also any former employees. We want to contact them to verify that they are legitimately filing the claim. We're going to look for missing or incorrect information. And we have some examples of patterns that we've seen. So there has been a pattern of a similar date range for fraudulent claims that have been coming through. We also want to make sure that we're reporting to the unemployment office that we've received the fraudulent claim, and we can submit that to the Department of Labor's Office of Special Investigations. And another good practice for employers to, even if it's not related to an unemployment scam, is to watch out for when we're sending out information about employees, whether it be their names, their personal information, or even their W-2s, to make sure that we're emailing those through an encrypted system or using a secure portal if we're communicating with other vendor partners. Next slide, please. We also want to talk today about how individuals can protect themselves and what steps they can take if there is a fraudulent claim. So some things that we can do, there's going to be a lot of resources that we're going to be raising today on a lot of these upcoming topics. And Jennifer is going to be posting links throughout our conversation in the chat function. But all of these resources are also available on the Northern website that we'll share later on. So what to do when you have a fraudulent claim, or how to protect yourself from fraudulent claim. We want to observe password safety best practices, using strong passwords or passphrases, avoid reusing passwords, updating your passwords regularly, and not sharing your password or PIN with anyone. That's very important. And only using trusted devices and access to your account. Another best practice is to password protect your home internet and only connect to well-known or reputable Wi-Fi hotspots in the public. But if you were ever to receive an unemployment notice that is fraudulent, definitely want to immediately contact the unemployment office. And Jen should be sharing that link with you now, but that's going to be available on our Northern website as well. It is also a good idea to have your credit report checked for possible suspected activity and posted fraud alerts. Another opportunity is to visit the Federal Trade Commission's website to learn helpful tips on recognizing and reporting identity theft. And one very important piece to remember is do not activate any debit cards that are mailed to you. To contact the financial institution that generated the card and inform them that it's a fraudulent claim and that they should put a hold on that account. Now, some of you may know of a victim of an employment scam, but we have a member of our team joining us today to share her own personal testimony. Ashley?
Thank you, Mary. So like Mary said, I was a victim of the unemployment scam for New York State. So what happened was actually a family member at one of my old addresses had received the unemployment letter in my maiden name to their address. So I was lucky enough to, be alerted of that fairly immediately. So from there, I did what the letter stated. I called the Department of Labor number. With the high volume of people calling in for unemployment, the call volume was extremely high and it was really difficult to get a hold of anybody. So what happened was the call kept on ending on me. So I was really kind of frustrated with that. But then I realized through Northern, I do have our identity monitoring program called Easy Shield. So what I did was I called them up and let them know what happened, and it was really reassuring. The voice on the other end of the phone, was very calm and really reassured me that a lot of these that they've seen with the unemployment scams have really been isolated. So they're not using the information to do other fraud scams either. With that, he gave me a list of things that I needed to do, where I needed to go to report this. So with not having the luck with getting through to the Department of Labor, he did provide me with the website to go to, which I know Jen has provided that for you. I went to the Trade Commissioner's website to report it there. I also went to the IRS website to report the fraud there. And then I also went to the 3 different credit bureaus to report that there, so I could monitor to ensure again that my Social Security number wasn't being utilized there. But with having Easy Shield, I'm able to monitor that on my own also daily, because with that, I would get alerts if there was unusual activity, used with my Social Security number. So with that, that was really reassuring that I had that backup, that I wasn't, open to more potential fraud with that. I also let my HR department know that that they could be receiving, a fraudulent unemployment claim for myself as well.
Wow, Ashley, that's a pretty powerful story you've got. I mean, it shows like the difficulties that you've gone through and the hardships of your situation, but also shows the support, the positive support that you've received from the partners that you're reaching out to help mitigate any further risk on your end. Thank you so much for sharing that today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mary.
Now, we had also mentioned if you receive a debit card in the mail to make sure that you're not activating that. We actually have a personal testimony from Jess Ridsdale, who's going to be sharing a little bit more about her experience with that.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So my experience with the unemployment fraud was very similar to what Ashley had described. I actually didn't receive information initially in the mail. I was notified by Mary from HR that there was the unemployment notice that came through. But I took same steps that Ashley took. Reached out to Easy Shield, had a great experience with them as far as them providing all the guidance around the steps to take to do the credit freeze or the fraud notice on the credit bureaus and all of those other steps. And in reviewing my credit report, they were great about, describing that I should take some time to go through that to ensure all of the charges, I guess you could say, that those were mine. So I took some time to do that. They had committed to calling me the next day, and they did. They reached out to make sure that everything on my credit report was accurate. If there was anything that was suspicious, they were prepared to walk me through additional steps. Fortunately, I didn't have to do that. And then a few weeks ago, I started to receive a number of notices from unemployment. So a couple of them were describing that I was eligible. And I also had, it was kind of mixed in with messages that they were aware because I had reported it as fraud. But I also received a couple of debit cards, which Mary had described. So with the debit cards, I wound up reaching out to the bank that issued them. And the woman that I spoke to was very helpful. So just like any other, I guess you could say, credit card that you receive in the mail, there's the sticker on the top of the card with an 800 number that you call to activate it. So in contacting them, they wound up blocking the cards and then made sure that there were notes connected to the account that they had for me, so that if there were any other accounts or cards that were being generated, that they knew that it wasn't connected to me. And also they put a note in the account, because my concern was, what if the person who's taken my identity wants to then change the address where the cards are being sent? And so it's a way to reroute the cards and then they can use the funds. So they made sure that all of that was noted within the account. I haven't received anything additional in the mail, but I definitely encourage anyone who receives those cards, reach out to the bank that issued them, and describe what's happened to you, and they'll help.
Wow, thank you, Jess, for that incredible story. What lengths we have to go through to protect ourselves once our information is out there. It's really, powerful to hear, personal testimony like that, and also hearing the positive experience that you had with the financial institution as a partner to help you watch out for your information. Thank you so
Well,
much.
I feel like when you place those calls, the people on the other end are doing all that they can to help.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, thanks, Mary.
Thank you. There's
Well,
a
Mary,
couple. Oh,
go ahead, Mary.
sorry. I was just going to say there's a little bit of added, protection for ourselves to add a code word to your accounts as an extra layer of security. And at Northern, our team members can help you add that layer of security. And there's also a website, for Northern that Jen's going to be sharing with everyone on the chat function to be able to access a list of different resources that Ashley and Jess have used to help protect themselves.
Thank you for sharing, Mary. I think there's some great information that's coming out today, not only for individuals, but for employers as well, that we're seeing come through. We did get, for yourself and Kate, a few more questions through the registration process. So maybe it'd be a good time to take some of these. One of the first questions that came through was, what did I do as an individual? Is there something that they did that would have made them more receptive to unemployment fraud?
Thanks, Jen. Yeah, I'll be happy to answer that. Really, the answer is no. There's a sense that we should have known that this was coming, or maybe should have taken steps to do something previously. However, this really was about opportunity. With as we previously mentioned, the significant amount of funds and the incredible load that the unemployment agencies had to take on with the pandemic and applications for unemployment, it created kind of a perfect storm. So, for instance, in New York State, typically the unemployment agency is prepared to handle about 50,000 phone calls per week. And in the first several weeks of the pandemic and the increased unemployment applications and inquiries, they were averaging around 7 million calls per week. So agencies really didn't have the infrastructure to mitigate some of these issues. And so voila, there was opportunity for fraudsters.
That's quite a difference there, Kate, going from
Yeah.
50,000 anticipation to 7 million. So thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
One of the other questions we got is, why are arrests not made when you have a name and address?
Yeah, I can speak to that. Now, I know that when we're receiving notices from the unemployment, we're not getting the names of the individuals who are fraudulently filing the claim. Sometimes they list an incorrect address to the individual, but it's not necessarily the address that is belonging to the person that's committing the fraud. So we don't really have that information on our end, but what we are doing is reaching out to the unemployment office so that they can then, do their research and reach out to support to try to, mitigate any future occurrences, and also find out who's doing that through the official offices.
Thank you for sharing that, Mary. To wrap up the session, I think we have one more question. Why did the unemployment office approve the fraudulent claim when I haven't worked for 7 years? Do they verify your information?
Well, again, that speaks to the ability of the folks committing the fraud to access various pieces of information. So while we've heard recently that for instance, Ashley's maiden name was used, a different address, there might be some pieces that they can put together that aren't completely current or don't show the complete picture from one individual that allow the claim to be verified, or simply it's also a possibility that the system was just completely overwhelmed and it got through.
Mm-hmm. Definitely something that we see here, different trends within our industry, that when there's something like the pandemic that happens, we have fraudsters that are taking advantage of that. So
Absolutely.
I really appreciate Kate and Mary, you sharing today. We may have other questions that come up related to unemployment as we move through the presentation. So again, I encourage all attendees utilize the chat function, because Mary and Kate are going to stay with us even as we go through some of our other identity theft related topics. So thank you again, ladies. Now I want to bring Katie Edmonds to the conversation. Katie's going to kick us off with going into COVID-19 scams. Katie, how are you doing this afternoon?
I'm doing well, thanks, Jen. Yeah, I think everything that's been shared so far is great, and I especially appreciate personal testimonies from Ashley and Jess, because sometimes it's difficult to talk about any fraud that you've fallen victim to, whether you've had an active participation in it or it's just happened to you and you had no forewarning that this was coming. The increase in fraud since COVID started is insane, and it's up to us to do everything we can to protect ourselves, and definitely in Northern we want to protect you. So there's a few things that we put together here, just some common scenarios we've seen, some advice on how to avoid or help fix things for you if your information has been compromised. Some fraud is directly related to COVID-19. We've seen several things where people are getting promises to get multiple stimulus payment checks, promises to get stimulus funds to people faster, and promises to pay more than you're eligible for. Collecting funds for fake charities, claiming they're collecting donations for COVID-19 relief funds that don't exist. And a lot of scams and fraudulent things revolving around advertisements for PPE supplies, cheap fake face masks, hand sanitizers, other high demand necessities that are required when we're dealing with COVID-19 related things. And then it results in no product actually being shipped to you. With some of these scams, a scammer will text or email you, call you, claiming that you're eligible to receive additional stimulus payments. Maybe they say they have a check ready for immediate deposit. All you have to do is provide them with your bank account routing and MICR number or your login credentials so that they can make that deposit for you. They're going to ask you for your personal information to verify that they're talking with the correct person. And oftentimes they're going to ask you to verify your name, your social security number, your date of birth, your address, and sometimes even more information. We're going to talk about kind of what's the risk of sharing those things. Sharing your personal information with the wrong people can lead to some pretty scary situations. Do you know what's at risk for you if you are sharing this information? When it comes to sharing information like your account number, it can allow the scammer to withdraw money from your account rather than make deposits for you. Scammers who offer merchandise online will collect your credit or debit card information in order to process the payment for the merchandise. In the world that we live in, it's not uncommon for us to provide that information and then have our product shipped to us, whether we've provided it over the phone or entered it into a website. It's completely natural for that type of processing to take place. But it's always important to verify the people you're speaking with or verify the sites that you're purchasing from, because giving them access to that debit or credit card information enables them to make future purchases using your card that you won't know about until you see the charges come through. So what can you do to avoid being a victim for these types of scams? I would say don't respond to any texts, emails, or phone calls about checks from the government. Do your homework when it's coming to donations. Don't ever donate in cash or by gift card or by sending a wire for the money. These forms of payment are more difficult or nearly impossible to trace, which can be an indicator that the person that's collecting the money is not really on the up and up. We want to keep in mind that the fraud evolving around the coronavirus itself is a little different. It's a different way scammers can try and get your information under the guise of trying to say they're going to sign you up for receiving your vaccine. Be careful of online offers for vaccination registrations and things. Make sure that you're verifying those sites that you're putting your information in to schedule your vaccinations. Watch out for emails claiming to be from the CDC or the WHO. Make sure you're using websites like coronavirus.gov and usa.gov/coronavirus. Don't click on links from sources that you don't know. If you get a robocall, hang up on it. Scammers are using illegal robocalls to pitch anything from low-priced health insurance to work-at-home schemes. Although working from home is kind of a new normal for us, we want to remain diligent in verifying sources of any employment offers that we might find online. On the next slide, we specifically talk about employment scams and some common ones we've seen, especially escalating during the pandemic. Car wrapping schemes, where a big name company is going to pay you to drive around with their advertisement decals on your cars. And mystery shopper scams, where they're going to have you go to a local store, make some purchases, and then provide them with a review on your customer service experience. Most of these scams have a common theme. where the scammer is going to typically offer the job through a classified ad or a social media platform. They're going to ask you for your address so that they can send you a check, or they're going to ask you for your banking information so they can make a deposit for you. In both of these types of scams, you're required to take the funds and then you make a purchase of some sort, whether it's purchasing money orders or gift cards to send to another person to complete that job or for you to complete your job. So let's think about what's at risk in these types of scenarios. Most often, the scammers are going to provide you with a check with instructions to cash it and send a portion of the funds to someone else. In the scenario of the car wrapping scam, you're going to be asked to cash the check and then pay the car wrapping company to get the advertisement decals put on your car. For the mystery shopper scam, you're going to take that check and then you're going to go purchase gift cards at a local store and report your shopping experience back to the fraudulent employer. In both of the scenarios, if the check is returned as being fraudulent, you're going to end up owing your financial institution the full amount of that check that's returned. This could potentially bring your account into the negative if you don't have enough money in your bank account already to cover the full amount of that check being returned. So what can you do to protect yourself against these types of job scams? Avoid jobs where you haven't physically met your employer or gone through some sort of official hiring paperwork. For example, they're going to have paperwork to add you to their company payroll versus sending you a check in the mail with no prior payroll information being collected. Avoid jobs that require you to send money or pay upfront costs to starting a job. This is a huge red flag because most employers aren't going to send money to somebody who isn't on their payroll yet. We would suggest that you visit accredited job sites to find legitimate offers from companies who've been verified to post on those sites. On the next slide, we're going to see different types of impersonation scams that we're going to cover, looking specifically at social security scams, scams from people claiming to be from tech support companies, and customer service scams. Again, I want to encourage anybody to utilize the chat feature if you have any questions that come up on any of the following slides. The first slide we're going to come to is going to talk about social security scams. There's a lot of motion going around social security scams. One of the scams we see is a Social Security Administration impersonator that's going to call you, and they typically already have some of your information before they call you. They've already obviously already found a way to get your name and your phone number. They might have your mailing address and your date of birth. And this information is useful to them because then they can use that to make it seem like they really do know who you are when they call you, and it gives them a feeling of credibility in your eyes when you're answering that phone and they already are claiming to be from a legitimate company and they've got some of your more sensitive information. Once you've verified the information that they have, common things they're going to tell you could be your social security number was compromised. One example is that it was used at a car rental agency in another state, and that car was stopped by the police because it was carrying drugs and illegal weapons. They like to use scare tactics to make sure that you're not going to hang up on them so that they can keep you in the conversation and see how much more information they can get from you. They're going to ask you to confirm your social security number. Whether they ask you for the last 4 digits or to confirm the whole number is going to depend on what they're looking to use your information for. But they're going to say that they need this information verified so that they can make sure the car really was rented using your information. Once they have your social security number information, they're going to do typically one of 2 things. Sometimes they're going to demand that you pay a fine for the alleged crime. Payment of fines will be requested as debit card or credit card payments, or sometimes they'll ask you to buy gift cards and send them the pictures of the cards with the PIN number exposed. Then they can use these cards to either sell them online to the highest bidder, or they can use them for their own personal purchases. The other scenario is going to be that they're just going to hang up with you because they've already got the information that they were looking for. Another common social security scam that we see is a fake Social Security Administration employee calling to tell you your social security number has been compromised, and as a result, it's being frozen. They'll typically say that they don't have any details about how or where the number was compromised, but they're going to have you verify that full Social Security number to ensure they're freezing the right one. During some of these types of calls, you may be told there's a warrant issued for your arrest. Again, this is going to be a scare tactic they're going to use to try and corner you and get you to pay fines to the scammer. Realistically, if the Social Security Administration has a warrant out for your arrest, they're not going to call you ahead of time and tell you that they're coming looking for you. Social Security Administration scams can also come through email or online pop-ups. The example we have on the screen is from one of the online scenarios that we've seen. You may be asked to visit a fraudulent website and enter information about yourself. Once you enter it on the website, the scammers can track the information that you've entered, and now they have it to use against you. These are particularly scary because scammers can use graphics in their communications and on their pages to make it look like they are part of a legitimate source, and they really are with the Social Security Administration. You just always want to remember to verify the website you're on is legitimate and make sure that you don't click on links that you can't verify the source from. I know we did receive one question in the registration process of should I apply for a new Social Security number? And I know Jen's sharing out a link that we found from the Social Security Administration. It's a little pamphlet. It describes some ways that someone might steal your number, what you can do if you think someone is using your number, and how and when you might want to apply for a new Social Security number. It does describe in there some reasons why getting a new number might not do any good for you, depending on who may already have it and how it's been used in the past. There's also information about credit issues and tax issues if somebody else is using your number. So similar to this one, with it being an online pop-up that came up, on our next slide, we're going to talk about tech support scams. These ones typically do start as a pop-up on your computer. It's going to alert you that there's a virus on there. They usually have a phone number listed, and you're going to call. It's going to direct you to a fake call center where the individual is going to claim to be from a well-known computer company. These scammers are going to ask you to download software that allows them to access your computer so that they can get in there and fix it for you. But once the software is on your computer, they now have the ability to move your mouse and click into all your files as if they were sitting in front of the computer themselves. This opens the door for the scammer to install viruses that can track you typing in your usernames and passwords to any website. They can take screenshots of anything on your computer, and they can use the information later to steal your identity or even steal funds from your bank accounts. Many tech support scammers require that you pay them for fixing your computer. However, rather than fixing the computer, they're putting things on their programs that they can access your computer later, which ends up giving them the ability to break more things on your computer, encouraging you to call them back to complete additional work. Most times that we've seen with these, the payments for these services typically are anywhere from $300 to $600 each time they come in to fix your computer. These payments can be done through credit cards or debit cards, sometimes gift cards. Again, they're going to ask you to buy those gift cards for big name places and have you send them pictures with the pins exposed. As soon as they have the information, they can use it themselves, and then you're left with a gift card with a $0 balance on it, and you have no way to recuperate the money you spent on those gift cards. Some tech support scammers will actually refuse to leave your computer until you've provided them with a payment. And if you refuse, they end up going to the scare tactics and threatening to charge you double or threatening legal actions against you if you don't give them the payment for the services they've given you. If you find yourself in one of these scenarios, disconnect your computer from the internet, shut it down, and hang up on the scammer. It's a good idea to take your computer to a professional service and have them scan for software that was downloaded that would enable that scammer to get back into your computer later. You don't want them to be able to get back in there and use anything against you. The last scam we're going to talk about is customer service scams, and I'm sure a lot of you have seen these come through. With so many companies providing easy access to online shopping, including major retailers like Amazon and Walmart, customer service scams can be totally crazy right now. Common scams include receiving a phone call or a text message. The caller will claim that many recent purchases have been made through your account that they believe are fraudulent, and now they want to resolve the issue for you. And in order to resolve that issue, they're going to ask you to provide basic information like your name and your address, phone number, and email. And they're going to say this information is to verify you, but it will likely be used later to contact you with other scams in the future, whether it's by that same scammer or they're going to sell your information online for other scammers to use. The scammer is going to pry for various different types of payment information. Since the charges aren't real, no real purchases were actually made, it's common they're going to say that they can't see what card was used for the purchase, but if you give them card information, they can enter it to see if it matches up with anything in the records for prior purchases. They're going to ask for your most used card numbers, the expiration dates on those cards, and the 3-digit security code on the back of the card so that they can look it up and see if they can find a match. They're going to promise everything is safe and they've successfully canceled any of those transactions and you're not going to be charged and that no further action is needed. While the scam is different in a sense that they're not asking you to give them money immediately, they now have several forms of payment information that they can use online now. If you receive a text or an email, it's going to commonly ask you to call a number that's in the message and speak with a representative, or they're going to provide a link where you can sign into a fake version of that merchant that they're claiming to be from. If you have accounts with that merchant and you enter in your login information, they can track the information you entered and then get in as if they are you. And that's particularly concerning if that's a main merchant where you have a debit card saved for easy checkout, because now they can go in, change the delivery address, and make an order with your card. We did receive a question about how can we stop spam calls. There is a national do not call registry. A lot of times this isn't necessarily going to stop you from getting those spam calls, because fraudsters and people engaged in illegal activities aren't really going to honor that list. Some phone companies have started flagging certain numbers if they know that it's potential spam. Just don't answer any of those calls that have been flagged as such. Once you answer the phone and you start speaking, they're going to know they have a good phone number and they're going to continue to try to reach out to you.
Well, Katie, we really appreciate you sharing all this information in regards to COVID-19, the employment, and the different impersonation scams. A lot of great information to individuals to be able to really prevent, or maybe they've experienced this already and it helps them to know what action to take. So going into questions, we do have a few questions for you, Katie, that came through in the registration process. And I know you've already addressed a few of them in regards to, should I take out a new Social Security number, or the spam phone calls that you were just touching on. And additionally, we got how to process a tax fraud. I mean, we are in the season right now of filing for income taxes, so not surprised to get that question. What are your thoughts there?
I know we're in a prime season for tax fraud. If someone has your name, your address, and your Social Security number, they can use that information to file a return in your name before you do, which means they could steal your refund. I do have a link for you to share out in the chat there, Jen,
Yep.
from Experian. They have different ways that they've described in there of how you'll find out if there's tax fraud being performed with your information, and what to do if you do become a victim of tax fraud.
Excellent. So a great resource from a credit company who definitely would be connected to those pieces. Katie, we also got a question on how can we ensure that our children's identity and also our own are not taken? Are there specific places we can look online to check?
There's a number of great identity monitoring services out there where you can monitor your Social Security number and your personal information. Your online free credit report is a great place to be able to see if anything's being run against yourself or a family member there. The Social Security Administration does have a link to see what's reported linked to your Social Security number. I don't know if I put that link in the slide there, Jen, but we can follow up with it after. I think I can find the specific one, but it will have you log into this Social Security Administration with your information, and then you can see what is reporting under your Social Security number there. I know a lot of identity monitoring services can not only monitor you, but they can monitor your family as well. But a lot of them do require that you pay them for a subscription per Social Security number that you are monitoring.
That's good information, and definitely we'll make sure that we get that Social Security link that you're speaking to, Katie, on to our website too as follow-up. What about a question, how does putting a freeze on your credit with Equifax or the other companies that have been mentioned, how does that help to protect you?
Well, there's two different things you can put on as far as your credit. You can put on what's called a fraud notice, which will, anytime your information is used to put through a credit application, you'll get notified. Or you can put a full freeze on it with the credit bureaus. And what that will do is it will block any applications from coming through, which is fantastic from a fraud side. But if you're considering applying for a loan or any type of credit card account, you will actually have to call ahead of time to let the credit bureaus know that you're going to put through a true application. And then you'll have to wait for that to be lifted so that you can go put that application in, and then you have to call to put it back down if you wanted your credit locked back down again. So, I mean, they can be great tools. You can make sure that nobody's using your information without your knowledge. It'll be blocked and never be able to go through. But again, if you did want to provide a true credit application, you would have to go through the steps to allow that to go through.
That makes sense, and it seems to be a good necessary step to take to protect yourself, especially if you're the one that you know that you are going to be taking advantage of taking out that loan. And Katie, I think for your questions wrap up, who do we contact when spam is expected or maybe uncovered?
Mm-hmm. It depends on what kind of spam you think you're falling victim to. I mean, if it's one of the scenarios that we've gone through today with unemployment related items, definitely the links that our HR department has shared out would be very helpful. If it's something with an incoming call, again, with one of these tech support or customer service scams, depending on the type of scam, there are ways to report numbers as fraud. Going back to the some of the phone companies are flagging certain numbers as fraud. I believe they're able to do that because people will do like a reverse phone lookup online and then report that number as spam. A lot of the cell phones actually have the ability to mark it as spam and immediately reject calls from that. So I think that's really going to be specific to the type of spam you think you're encountering.
That makes sense as you described that. And earlier today, I got one of those that came right through my phone. So knowing from working with you, Katie, I never answer. So
thank you for that. Good for you.
You're welcome. So we do have another question that came through. Ashley, I think it might be best that you address this question. Ashley Backus is an employee here at Northern, and she's part of our training team. We had a question that came through that I do think is very relevant because it's from a protection standpoint. So how easy is it for someone to get access to your bank account or information? Ashley, could you speak to what does Northern do to protect individuals if they were to call in or try to access information?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we have a member that calls in, we really want to ask what we call out of wallet questions to verify that account. So we're not asking, phone number, potentially that's not on your ID, but if your information has been compromised, phone number is going to be an easy thing for them to verify your date of birth, address. So we really want to ask those more in-depth verification questions. So do they have any loans on that account, and what type of loans do they have? Do they have any joint members on the account, and can they name those joint members? And potentially, do they have any other accounts with us? Because potentially, that scammer is not going to know the answers to that. So we really wanted to dive in deeper with them, so that way we can truly be sure that we have that member on the phone.
Thank you for sharing, Ashley. The security
Absolutely.
of our members, and I'm sure all other financial institutions, as we have many individuals joining us today, whether members or non-members with Northern, part of our community, protecting individuals and their information is always a top priority. So appreciate you sharing. And to wrap up, I think one of our last questions and unique to each individual, is my money insured through my financial institution? So many financial institutions here, credit unions, we're insured by NCUA. So the structure of all the accounts here, we can tell you your funds are insured. There are different dollar limits that go up, and the structure of the accounts can increase that as well. So we really encourage for you to reach out on whether or not if you do your have your accounts here at Northern or another institution, and speak to a representative at that institution, because your scenario and your situation would be different from others depending upon what works best for your accounts. So with that, we want to just take a time and thank everybody for attending today. As we're describing, we're here to help. It's such a pleasure to partner with Pivot in bringing this information to our community, sharing not only with individuals, but employers as well. As we've mentioned throughout the presentation, please, for the resources that have been chatted out today and mentioned by our presenters, you can go to Northern's website. We do have a fraud prevention center that has many different links and resources to take advantage of. And certainly, if you are concerned about potential fraud, we really encourage you to call or text us at that 315, excuse me, 782-0155. We also have the ability to do live chat and video banking here at Northern. And then you can certainly visit us at any relationship center to have that conversation as well. So again, we just want to thank everybody for joining us today. If there's any question that you have that we haven't addressed, please feel free to reach out to us. And again, this recording will be available on both Northern social media page and with Pivot. Thank you and have a great day.